Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After you through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. Very exciting episode today. Obviously, this is the first time we've made the playoffs since 2016. I'm pretty sure we were doing this show at that point in time. And if it wasn't, it had to have been. I think that was the first year we did it, which is crazy to think about. It's crazy. It's just a really good feeling. I'm sure all Dolphins fans feel the same way, even though the season was very up and down, to the lowest of lows because of how good the team is. And I still feel that way, even in that there was a lot of reasons for those losses, but even with all the injuries, it just is a really good feeling. This team deserved to be in the playoffs. Mike McDaniel deserved to go to the playoffs. I feel like the record does not reflect how good this team will be in the future. And it just is a really good feeling that they got in. And they deserved it. And it was a really close game. And honestly, and I think people need to put, and I don't know that we're taking forever to get into the news, but people need to put in perspective of how many times the Dolphins have opportunities to have done this and didn't do it with lesser odds to overcome. And the fact that Mike McDaniel got this victory with a third-string quarterback against one of the best defenses in the National Football League is very impressive. And I don't think he gets enough credit for some of the things that he did and some of the things he's accomplished this season in terms of completely turning around a dumpster fire of an offense in 1 year that hasn't been this prolific since Dan Marino retired. And I think that's a big deal. And I'm very excited for him to be our head coach for the next how many ever years he is. I think he's going to do a great job, especially obviously if the roster can stay healthy. I think this team is going to be really special. So anyway, let's get into the news you need to know about. We actually have a lot of news that you need to know about this week. This first one comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it's a quote from Sam Madison and what he had to say about Byron Jones. He said that he had a conversation with him, and he went on to say in the press conference that some players fight through injuries and some players don't, implying that Byron Jones isn't fighting through the injury. One thing I know a lot of Dolphins fans are freaking out about this quote, and obviously Sam Madison, if you're not familiar, our cornerback, our DB room coach, I think he shares it with Patrick Surtain. I have a completely different opinion on this. I don't actually think this. I think it's a little unfair to Byron. He played on that Achilles injury all year last season, and he fought through it there. I think it's actually honestly smart the fact that he didn't come back, and it's good for the Dolphins that he didn't come back. I actually hope if he stays, and after a comment like that, it's gonna be kind of weird. But if he does come back next year, I hope he does because he's really talented. But he'll have a healthy season for the first time, really, since he's been a Dolphin, because he's dealt with a lot of injuries since he's been in Miami. So hopefully he can come back fully healthy and kind of reunite those two great corners. And especially with the emergence of Kader Kohu, Nick Needham is a free agent this upcoming season. So a lot of those things are going to have to factor into those decisions. And we'll see what Chris Greer ends up doing. I think the biggest thing when it comes to the defensive side of the football is they're going to have to make a change on that side of the ball. I do, and we'll talk about that later in the show. I think this was the best plan that Josh Boyer had all year as a defensive coordinator. He mixed it up a lot. It was well executed. He did some creative things to get pressure on the quarterback. So it was kind of hopefully can continue that momentum against Buffalo. But definitely his best plan. But I think that side has to change. The front seven is too talented. The way he utilizes them, I feel like they can be utilized a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot better in a different scheme. And we'll see if they make that change. But staying on Byron Jones and Sam Madison making that comment, I think it's a little unfair. I hope this doesn't cause some kind of weird friction and he leaves. But if he can come back healthy, I think it's a big help. And it would make one of the best second. I mean, especially if Brandon Jones can come back healthy, that would be one of the best, if not the best secondary in the league. That's a really, really good secondary, especially with Kader Kohu playing like he has been. So if we can just keep those guys together, if we get a new D coordinator, marry that with the front seven that we have, that's a really special defense. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Anyway, moving on from that, we have more, obviously more news to talk about here. An update on the Tua situation. No, we won't do that yet. We'll do Raheem Mostert first. So Raheem Mostert's doubtful for the game against Buffalo. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. He had the broken thumb against the Jets. Here's what I will say about Raheem Mostert. That is completely... First of all, when I was looking at the stat sheet, I was like, this dude almost has 1,000 yards rushing, which is really hard to believe. He almost had 1,000 yards rushing because we didn't run the ball that much. And it's kind of weird when you think about it because it's like, man... It's crazy how effective Mike McDaniel's run game was without the greatest run blocking offensive line in the world. Like, not even... I mean, we're talking below average. And the fact that he didn't even do it that much. Raheem Mostert... And the scheme, because the scheme is really good, was able to get that much production out of it without really doing it, which I think is kind of mind-boggling in a way. So, and here's what I want to say about Raheem. He's obviously a free agent and he's very important. Hopefully he can come back and play in this game against Buffalo. But his playmaking ability is something that I really did not expect. When you think of Raheem Mostert, I think more as a one-dimensional runner. And since he's been in Miami, he's done pretty much everything well. He runs with power, which is something that I did not think Raheem Mostert did. But he's a very powerful runner. Obviously, his speed is very explosive. He's not much of a make-you-miss guy as some of the other... Now, he has shown the ability to do that, but I think that's probably his least quality in terms of as a runner. He's got great vision, too. I think some of those things I just didn't expect from him. So he's a better running back than even I gave him credit for. And I hope we can bring him back next year. There's a lot of big-name running backs in free agency that, if they ever came to Miami, would make this offense insane. Like, people like Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs. Now, you have to be careful with those contracts, obviously, because of the nature of the position. But I think it would be worth it, similar to what the Niners did with Christian McCaffrey. And that was even more of a gamble. Because of McCaffrey's injury history to give up that much capital, but obviously it ended up really working out for them. Obviously McCaffrey's a great player, and that would be something that I think Miami should look into. But Raheem Mostert has played a lot better than I thought he would, and his production is really good without really getting to touch the ball that much. And I think he's much better than Jeff Wilson. No offense to Jeff Wilson, but he has not played well since the Cleveland game, at least I think. He hasn't looked great at all, in my opinion, which is, I think, is a bad thing. They're kind of having a little bit of bad luck. I honestly think Ahmed has looked better than Jeff Wilson, in my opinion. I think he just runs better. He's better side to side than Jeff for sure. And I think he's a little bit more explosive hitting the hole, which is kind of wild to say. But yeah, anyway, that's the news on Raheem Mostert. He's definitely not. I would not expect him to play in this game, unfortunately, because he's a lot better than I thought he was going into the season for sure. So I think that's pretty much. Everybody else is kind of up in the air. Teron Armstead, those guys are up pretty much with their Tua, who we're going to talk about right now. According to Mike McDaniel, he still hasn't had an update. And according to Pro Football Rumors, the Dolphins are hoping for an update on a Wednesday on his availability for the playoff game. Now, there has been a report that it's not a report, it's a fact. And again, this is also in the Pro Football Rumors report, that he has not cleared concussion protocol yet. So obviously they're waiting for more news on that Wednesday. And now to talk about Tua, who's been a very big topic of discussion, I think, especially these last 5 weeks. I will say that I think noticing the difference in quarterback play from Tua to Teddy to Skylar has been very eye-opening. I think Tua does a lot more for the team than, and I will say this, like he played very bad in some of those games, in those losing games, like he really did. I don't know what happened to him, but I think when we have when Tua is healthy, and he's really a lot better than I think people think. He's really, really good. It's just, and I think watching these games, and to talk about Skylar, I think Skylar has a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of plays, and this is the same thing with Teddy. I don't really understand what the heck's going on with these two, because Teddy's supposed to be this veteran quarterback that can see the field, but they leave way too many plays on the field. Skylar, the 4th and 5 is a great example of that. He has Tyreek Hill wide open for a first down. He just doesn't throw it for whatever reason. There was a play where he had Jalen Waddle in a deep corner wide open. He just didn't see it. I can't remember exactly where that was in the game, but I think that was a 3rd down as well in the 3rd quarter. And it's just stuff like that. Last week, not only did Teddy Bridgewater throw the pick 6, but he had Tyreek Hill wide open. There was nobody around him for a walk-in touchdown. You can't leave those plays on the field. And that has been a huge issue for this offense all year. There have been people open that they need to be hit and taking advantage of those plays when you have to take advantage of them. The Niners game, I think, is the most egregious example of that. Even in the Packers game, there were too many plays left on the field, especially in that second half. Now, obviously, Tua, we know now, is dealing with the concussion. But it's stuff like that and I don't want to get negative, because this is, has been a great week to be a Dolphins fan. But I say all that to say that it'll be interesting to do what the Dolphins decide to do at the quarterback position. How do they look at the Niners game, the Packers game? How do they look at those games and think to themselves, how do they view that for Tua? And I think I said, the Packers game, even the Chargers game to a certain extent. It's going to be interesting to see how the front office deals with that. And, the offense isn't perfect. The run game needs to be better. That needs to be, I think they still need a third playmaker on the offense. I know that sounds crazy, but, Mike Gesicki had that big catch in this game, but he hasn't really been that guy. They need that third guy, whether it's the running back position or a slot receiver, someone like a Jacoby Myers. They need another guy, and we'll see what they do. So I think those are the two, off-season, the 3 things that it's going to be interesting. They need a new backup quarterback, that's for sure. What do they view Tua at? How do they view Tua? Is going to be very interesting. They need a third playmaker on offense, and they need a new defensive coordinator. Those are the 3 things that I think they desperately need. I think, something like an extra middle linebacker would be a luxury. That is something that they do not need to put assets in, for sure. A tackle would be nice as well. But again, I think that's more of a luxury. I'm not mad at bringing back Brandon Shell for another season. Maybe you go out and get another guard, but I think those top 3 things are obviously more important than some of those other things. I think some of those other things are a little bit more minor. I'm happy with the way that especially Connor Williams, Armstead, Brandon Shell, Robert Hunt, I'm very happy with the way that they played this season. Brandon's obviously getting a lot older, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. But they have to bring him back. He's played too well as a backup player. And if they bring him back as a backup, that's even great. And I'm actually really happy with the way Eichenberg played the last 2 weeks. So I think really the offensive line, for the most part, as the year went on, especially got better. I don't think they really have to do too much to the offensive line, in my opinion. So moving off of that, which we were talking about too, is head injury. But they need to play in this game against Buffalo, because Skylar and Teddy have looked terrible all season. Skylar obviously looked a lot better in preseason, but in the regular season, I've gotten to see it 3 times now. It's just all right, I've had enough of it. And Teddy has played bad all year, and even in the preseason, he's played bad. And what I will say about Tua, I think some of the stuff, even in the losing streak, there were other things going on. I think that was the biggest reason, was the quarterback play, but the defense also, and there's injury stuff that was happening. It wasn't all his fault, to defend him a little bit. And to take it even a step further, he did have the best season a quarterback has had at Dolphin the last 20 plus years. Like, it's not even close. So you just, it's like, how do you view those bad games? And that's going to be up to Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer. Because if it was me, I think, like I said before, there's only a select few situations that I would even entertain. Aaron Rodgers being one of them. I think that's really the only one. I mean, if the stars align on Lamar Jackson, but I don't think that's happening for any other franchise other than Baltimore. So that's out of the question. So again, like I said, there's very little. I think a lot of people would make an argument for Tom Brady. That would be interesting, I guess. That to me is a little ridiculous, but it would, like I said, it would have to be there's like a very small, it would take two very interesting situations to even consider that, in my opinion. But for a fact, there's no way that they don't leave that offseason without a backup quarterback. They have to. Whether they need to figure that out. I don't know who it's going to be, but they have to figure that out for sure. I think that's it. I think we covered it all. All the news-related activity stuff. I don't think there's really anything else to really talk about. It's going to be interesting to see the defensive coordinator thing is going to be really interesting. Because I think that's for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. I almost dropped this thing. Sorry, guys. That has to be fixed. And again, and we're about to get into it, but by far was his best game plan. But against the Jets, and thank God it was. But it just, and even against the Patriots, that wasn't a bad game plan either. But that offense is awful. It's just, for the love of God. Most of the time, it's the same. I will say this is the most different it's been the last 2 weeks, especially against the Jets. But it just has to change. But anyway, let's get into, and again, I don't want to sound, especially since these last few weeks, the Tua thing. But I think I've said what I had to say. I don't want to be too negative here, because it is a great week to be a Dolphin. It feels so, like I said, this team deserved to go to the playoffs, and thank God that they made it in. So let's get into to this game. The Dolphins win to clinch a playoff berth, which is just awesome to say. They went 11-6 against the New York Jets at home. Their defense gave the best performance of the year. It's not even close. They played phenomenal. Mike McDaniel had a great game plan. I think offensively, some things were really bad luck and not executed well, and I think for those reasons is why we didn't score more points. And Skyler didn't play; he didn't turn the ball over, but that's as far as that goes. He just did not. He didn't turn the ball over, but he also wasn't really seeing the field all that well. So that, honestly, that's pretty much it. But I do want to get into defense. This front seven is phenomenal. And I don't think it gets enough credit because of the way that the defense is played, but it's so good. It is really, really, really good, and it's special. It really is. I hope they can retain Christian Wilkins. He has been a phenomenal player. He will go down as one of the best Dolphins of all time if he can keep this up. He's great. He's not good, he's great. And Zach Sealer next to him is phenomenal too. He's really good. And then they have that Raekwon Davis they can mix in. They have to keep those guys together, and I think they will. They really don't have to bring back Melvin Ingram, but that would be cool if they did, because Van Ginkel, I think, is probably a better player than Melvin Ingram at this point in his career, in my opinion. But that front seven they have to figure out a way to keep those guys together, and for another season. And like I said, when the secondary gets healthy, if you're a defensive coordinator, this defense really can fit any scheme. There's no scheme that it can't fit. It can fit a 4-3-3-4, nickel-heavy defense, all that stuff. It can fit any scheme you want them to fit. Quarters coverage, rush 4, wide 9, whatever it is, they can do it at a high level. So I'm excited to see them in a different scheme, and hopefully, and again, we'll see what happens. But those guys are so good, so good, and they carried in this game. Shout out to Landon Roberts as well, that huge tackle on the screen. He had a really good game too. I mean, Zonovan Knight had 12 carries for 22 yards, averaged 1 point yards a carry. Ty Johnson had 5 carries for 12 yards, 2 yards a carry, and Michael Carter 3 carries for 4 yards, barely a yard a carry. They harassed Joe Flacco the entire game. Garrett Wilson, that was really their entire offense. He just made some insanely good plays. I don't really have anything else to say about that. I feel like, especially in critical situations, like there were certain, I lost it when Joe Flacco scrambled to the right late in the fourth quarter and Jerome Baker was pursuing him and he threw a pass on the run for a 14-yard first down. Dude, I lost it. That was like, I'm telling you guys, like, you want to talk about dumb, just bad luck. Like, that's a great example of that. But, the snap going over Skyler's head, the busted block on the end around that should have went for a big gain, but the guy just missed the block. That ended up being a loss for like 20, or not 20. Maybe it was 20. It was like 15 yards. But stuff like that. It's just like, this is just dumb. Like how no other team in the league this would happen to except us, especially in a big game like this. So, but yeah, like, what was I even saying? Oh yeah, Garrett Wilson was, and again, I love the variety of blitzes in this game. I thought they did a really good job with that. It wasn't the same blitzes that we've been running all year. They moved people around and really did a good job of confusing the Jets' offense, at least up front. Not so much in the secondary, because we run the same coverage every play, but just to kind of mix the blitzes up and stuff, I thought really helped, and hopefully we can do that against Josh Allen. I think that will really help against him, if we can kind of continue to innovate on that and add new stuff. Who knows if he'll do that? I hope so, because they have really started a lot, and this is the fastest this defense has started a game all year. Literally, I think pretty much most of the season, the other team went down the field on the first drive and scored a touchdown. That has to stop, especially on the road. That's been rough. So, except against the Niners, I believe. Or maybe they did actually score a touchdown on their opening drive. I think they did, actually. I can't remember. I know we did, obviously, to Trent Sherfield. But yeah, that has to stop as well. But anyway, defensively phenomenal. Jason Sanders, who has missed pretty much every 50, meaningful field goal this year in clutch situations, he's missed. And the biggest kick of his life, he hits it. I literally I almost could not look at the TV because of how, dude, it was too much. Like, it was too much. And thank God he hit it. And I want to also say that shout out to the home crowd. I think that was the best home crowd that we've had in a long time. I thought they were great the entire game. They really impacted the Jets in big moments too. I felt they were just you could feel the energy in of the fans, which you can't say that too often. Like, and I hate to say that, but especially in previous seasons. But this game you could really feel it, which was good. And so the whole thing was great. The whole thing made the 5-game stuff way less hurtful, and it definitely. It just was a different vibe, and it just felt earned, and it felt like they deserved it for sure. And the fans deserve it, obviously. This year was very, like I said, up and down, but there's so much to look forward to with this team. And when you really step back and look at it, it means a lot for Chris Greer as well. But when you look at Chris's resume the last 4 or 5 years, it's really good. I mean, it really is. Like, a lot of the players have turned out to be great. Even in this class, I think, Cater obviously is going to be great. I think Eric Ezukama has a really nice future ahead of him as well. So he's drafted really well over the last few years. So that's, Christian Wilkins has turned out to be a great first-round pick. So his drafts have been amazing as well. So that's pretty much all the things I have to say about this game. This game, for the most part. I don't think. Oh, and another thing I want to say is, I can't remember our offensive line coach off the top of my head, Applebaum or Apple something like that. I can't remember his name right now, but he's done a phenomenal job of getting these guys ready, especially since how many times we've had to cycle out tackles this year. They've been very prepared, and they've played very well. And again, that's a great testament to Mike McDaniel as well. And I can't say enough about that because previous coaches have really messed that up. Like, really messed it up to the point where I feel like some of those injuries, Billy Turner is a great example. He leaves Miami and he's had a great career. Like, I feel like a lot of the coaching staffs that we've had in previous years have really not dealt with offensive linemen getting hurt well at all. And this staff did a phenomenal job with that. And that's something else that I feel like shouldn't get overlooked. And another thing that I want to say. Danny Crossman, he has to go too. He has to go too. They need to figure out the special teams issues, and that's something Chris is going to have to do a good job of in the offseason, of just kind of moving some guys around and kind of replenishing that side of the football, because it just isn't a good look, especially in the return game. There's just our field position has been bad. Hopefully Morstead comes back for another season. He's done a great job. Best punter we've had in years. And I don't know, Jason can come back. I have no issue with that. But we have to do something about the return game. Anyway, let's move on to the fan Q&A. This first question comes from SM. He says, Tua, Mike Gesicki, Byron Jones are all done in Miami. Geno Smith has 30 touchdowns this season. Trade for Geno. Absolutely not. Geno Smith is way worse than... He's worse than Tua. I'm sorry, but I don't understand that whole Tua Geno Smith thing. If you guys watch Geno Smith in some of these games, watch the Carolina game, watch the Rams game. He's lucky to win. Well, first of all, he lost the Carolina game. But he's looked, he has still too much of, he makes stupid decisions too much. Those guys that he has in Seattle aren't bums by any stretch of the imagination. He has DK Metcalf, he has Tyler Lockett, he has Pete Carroll, he has Kenneth Walker. His offensive line is much better this season. In my opinion, I don't think he's better than Tua. I think Tua sees the field a bit better. I think he has better pocket presence and better feel for the game. He's more accurate than Geno. I will say that for whatever reason, especially when Tua was playing bad, he lost control of the football and his throwing was inconsistent. I don't know, for whatever reason. That's not something that we've seen from him. Especially for literally the entire year up until that point. Geno, I would say, if there's anything that Geno does better than Tua, he never really loses control of the football. That doesn't mean he's more accurate, but he's never going to throw it high. He's never going to, for the most part, throw it. I guess the best way to explain this is high. And, he's going to always have a tight spiral. He controls the ball better, more consistently. At least these last few weeks. I don't know, for whatever reason, but to give Geno Smith something, I'll give him that. And I know some people might say he's a better athlete. It's pretty much a trade-off on that one. Geno, he does scramble, but Tua does too, and I think Tua is just a better player. He reads coverages better. I think he goes through his progressions better. I think he's more accurate, and I think he makes better decisions with the ball itself. But anyway, just to compare those two and why I wouldn't trade Tua for Geno. I just don't think that would be very smart. I hope Byron comes back. Mike is definitely gone. His attitude. I'm sorry, but some of even him saying to Dawson Knox, at least they use you and stuff like that. It's not like, I don't know. But Mike Gesicki's a whole different situation. This next question comes from user. He says, might be too difficult of a question off the top, but with the regular season over, which coaches need to be replaced in the offseason and which coaches are must keeps? This comes from user. He says might be difficult off the top, but what with the regular season, which coaches need to be replaced? Danny Crossman, I've already said. Josh Boyer for sure needs to be replaced. That's really it. I think offensively, we talked about the offensive line coach whose name's escaping me right now. Wes Welker, Daryl Bevel. Those guys are all they've done a phenomenal job, and especially Daryl and the offensive line coach. There's so many names that I can name off that have done a great job. But for whatever, Danny, and I think he gets more of a pass because I think some of the talent on special teams hasn't been great. But Josh, for sure, has been putting players in positions where they haven't been able to be at their best, and I think it's a detriment to the defense. He's been way too predictable for people to game plan, and it just isn't a good look. So he needs to go, and that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anybody off the top of my head that I can think of that I would say is oh, this guy it's a fireable offense. I don't think there's anybody like that other than those two. and again, Danny, you could argue for that. It's okay, yeah, but he didn't really have that much. But then we go and okay, someone like Darren Rizzi, for an example, he really never had great special teamers for the most part in terms of returners and stuff like that. I mean, he had a couple guys like Marcus Thingpen, Kenyon Drake, I think is another name that we could throw out there. But he made a lot of his players better. And I don't know, maybe Darren can come back for a year. That'd be great. But I think he's still up in New Orleans. But if who knows, if that coaching staff gets shook up, hopefully he can come back to Miami. This question comes from Ray Gonzalez. He says, what will the team have to do to have a chance at beating Buffalo next Sunday? They have to play better defense the entire game, and especially early on because it's on the road and it's a playoff game. But they have to play better defense. They gave up way too many 3rd and longs last time we played them. You have to take advantage of those situations. You can't give up a 3rd and 18. You just can't do that. And they give up too many 3rd and goals. We have to play better red zone. I mean, the one before half is a great. The time would have ran out on them, and they wouldn't have gotten any points out of it. So in crucial situations, they have to play and somehow have to figure out how to come up with a big play or a deflection or whatever it is. And then offensively, I think they just have to do what they did last time: run the football, and don't miss big plays when they're there to be had. That's really it, because that's pretty much all I have to say. And Tua has to play in this game for us to have a chance to win. This next question comes from Alpha. And again, what I want to say about the defense is they put themselves in great positions to succeed. They just have to take advantage of them. That's really it. That's all I have to say. And again, Josh needs to do a better job. Some of the long yardage defensive calls have been terrible. The Chargers game's a great example of whatever the heck he was playing on 3rd and goal. Or it was 2nd and goal, 2nd and very long. No, was it 3rd and goal? It was 3rd and goal. It was 3rd and goal. And we played that awful defense, and they throw a screen for almost a touchdown. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? This is exactly what I'm talking about. This defense is too dang good to be doing stupid stuff like that. Anyway, dude, there's so many dumb things that Josh has done this year. Don't even get me started. Against the Niners, blitzing everybody in a 2-minute drill when it hasn't worked. It's just so stupid. Alright, anyway. So yeah, those are the things that have to be done better. Anyway, this next question comes from Alpha. He says, I said all year I knew Byron Jones quit on us. What would you do with him? I would bring him back. He's just too good. And especially if Nick Needham gets a big deal, hopefully he doesn't. I would love for him to come back, but it's too good of an opportunity to keep those guys together. I feel like they're just too good. So I would keep them together. This next question comes from Alpha. He says, is there a scenario that you see Josh Boyer keeping his job? Again, this question comes from Alpha. Outside of a Super Bowl appearance, I hope he is gone no matter what, but worried that since we made the playoffs, they might give him a pass. No, they're not going to give him a pass. You could even see that Mike McDaniel was upset with him. Now, if he has a great plan against Buffalo and we win that game, then I would keep him, in my opinion. I just don't think if he has a great... I mean, we'll see. I don't even want to say this stuff because I obviously want to win that game so bad, but I don't know. I think you're right. I think there's really no way he comes back because I just think it's not. It's just if he had a healthy defense, this defense would look a lot better. But he has to have like great secondary players, but that's a detriment to the defensive line. And I think most defensive coordinators would say this. They'd rather have the talented defensive line than the secondary. Well, the scheme that Josh runs, it's in reverse. And that's really hurt us this year with turnovers and all that stuff on third down and some of these big drives. That's really hurt us because of the scheme we run, because we haven't had as dominant. We don't have as many dominant players in the secondaries as we would if we were healthy. But if we played through our defensive line more, I think we would have gotten more turnovers. If we mixed up coverages to help out the secondary more, I think that would have helped out a lot in some of the and he just doesn't do that stuff. And the defense is just too predictable. That's why teams convert so many big situational plays. Is they have game plan specific plays for the coverages that we play because they know we're gonna play them in those big situations. So all of those reasons are why Josh has to be let go. And so yeah. One thing I also want to point out, and I know I just kind of think people are going to say something about this. What I mean by control of the football is, again, it's you kind of know where the ball is going to. It doesn't mean he's inaccurate, because he's not as accurate as Tua. And I do mean from that whatever, I don't know why Tua was missing high so much. He even said in that game that he lost control of the football. I don't know, but in my opinion anyway, I think Tua is better. That doesn't mean I'm right. But anyway, this next question comes from Alpha. This last question. No, I think that's it, actually. We answered all these questions. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. It feels good to be in the playoffs. Like I said, this team has a lot to look forward to. I'm excited for this offseason because it's going to be interesting to see what they do to continue the momentum. This is, 3 years in a row of a winning season. And we finally made the playoffs this year. And I think this team can win a Super Bowl with this foundation. I really do. It's just going to take it's actually just going to take one thing. I think they need a new defensive coordinator to achieve that. And I think if Tua can if he can just be what he was when he was on that hot streak, and he looked like the best quarterback we've seen in it feels like a lifetime, then yes, we can win a Super Bowl. And say we go get someone like an Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson's a dang prayer. But if one or two things fall the Dolphins' way, then they're going to win a Super Bowl, which is crazy to say. That's all they need to happen. The foundation is there. It's really good. And they could win a ring. They really could. But that is it. I hope, and we can have a home playoff game in Miami. I really do believe that. Which is even cool. I mean, not even cooler than winning a Super Bowl, but that's pretty dang cool. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's awesome that we're going to talk about a playoff game on the show next week, which is cool. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, if I could get it out. It feels good. It feels real good. And I'll see you guys in the next one.